In 1981, a young man from Anambra State set up a small shop in Nui, Nigeria, selling motorcycle spare parts. Toyota had been in Nigeria for decades, Honda, Peugeot, Volkswagen. The roads were full of foreign machines, and the money, billions of Naira, left the country every single year. 40 years later, that same man was suing one of Nigeria's most powerful banks for 400 billion Naira. His company had delivered armored vehicles to the Nigerian military. His SUVs were in presidential convoys, and he had done something no African entrepreneur had ever done at scale. He built a car, in Africa, from scratch. His name is Innoson Chukwuma, and the story of Innoson, Nigeria's first indigenous car company, is one of the most dramatic, complicated, and underreported business stories on the continent. This is the chapter someone tried to delete. Let's talk about the scale of what we're dealing with. Every year, Nigeria imports over 400,000 used vehicles. Most of them arrive through the port of Lagos, battered Toyotas, second-hand Hondas, decade-old Hyundais from Europe, America, Japan. In 2023 alone, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigerians spent approximately 1.3 trillion Naira on imported vehicles. That's over $1 billion. Gone, out of the country, every single year. Local production? According to National Economy, local Nigerian car manufacturing accounts for less than 1% of annual vehicle imports. Less than 1%. This is the battlefield Innoson Chukwuma walked into. Not to sell cars to oil executives, not to build a niche luxury brand. He walked in with the explicit goal of manufacturing vehicles that ordinary Nigerians could drive, in a country where 85% of cars on the road are used imports, in a country where the roads themselves are a test of engineering endurance. And this is the story of what happened when he tried. Quick note, this video is for educational purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice. To understand Innoson, you have to understand Nui. Nui is a city in Anambra State in southeastern Nigeria. It's not Lagos, it's not Abuja. But inside Nigerian business culture, Nui is legendary. People call it the Japan of Africa, not because of technology, because of trade. Nui built its identity on one thing: spare parts. For decades, Nui traders had the most sophisticated auto parts market on the continent. If your Toyota engine cracked somewhere in West Africa, there was a Nui trader who could find the part, ship it, and have it at your door before the mechanic gave up. It was into this world that Innoson Chukwuma was born. In 1981, Chukwuma founded the Innoson Group. He started where Nui started, motorcycle spare parts. But Chukwuma was watching something that many of his peers were not. He was watching where the money actually went. The parts came from Japan. The bikes came from Japan. When Nigerians bought a Honda, they were buying a Japanese idea, assembled maybe in China, shipped through global supply chains that had no Nigerian address anywhere in them. Every transaction was a vote for someone else's economy. Chukwuma decided he wanted a vote too. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Innoson Group expanded from parts into electronics, then into manufacturing motorcycle components locally. Step by step, Chukwuma was learning how to make things, not just sell them. The key move came when he began building relationships in China, not importing from China in the way most Nigerian traders did, but actually partnering with Chinese manufacturers to learn the technical side. How do you stamp sheet metal? How do you assemble a chassis? How do you build something that doesn't fall apart on Nigerian roads? By the 2000s, Chukwuma had cracked enough of those questions to attempt something audacious. In 2010, Innoson Vehicle Manufacturing, IVM, opened its doors in Umudim, Nui, Nigeria's first and only indigenous car manufacturer. Let that land for a second. Not a joint venture where a foreign brand slaps a Nigerian flag on the bonnet. Not a licensed assembly plant bolting together imported kits. An actual Nigerian-owned company designing and building vehicles in Nigeria. The early lineup included pickup trucks, SUVs, buses, and sedans. The G80, the Umu, the Karis. Names built for the African market. The cheapest base model started around $19,000, priced competitively against imported alternatives when you factored in new vehicle reliability. Journalists and analysts who visited the Nui facility described something surreal: a functional car plant in a semi-rural town in southeastern Nigeria, churning out vehicles with a largely local workforce and Chinese technical assistance. David Hundian, writing for the Africa Report, called it a zombie business that should not exist, not as an insult, but as a kind of awe, because by all conventional logic, this should not have been possible. But it was. There is something worth sitting with here. The year is 2010. Nigeria's oil revenues are near their peak. The country is being called one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. Foreign investors are flying in from London and New York and Beijing to get a piece of the action. And in the middle of all this, in a town most of those investors had never heard of, a man who started by selling motorcycle parts in 1981 is opening an automobile factory. No government check, no Silicon Valley angel round, no World Bank development loan. This was built through decades of trade profits, reinvested over and over again into increasingly ambitious manufacturing bets. Chukwuma had taken a calculated bet that Nigeria's dysfunction, its preference for the familiar, its reliance on foreign goods, was not destiny, it was habit, and habits can be broken. He found the gap.
And then came the enemies. Here is where the story gets complicated. And here is where it intersects with Toyota. To understand the conflict, you need to understand how the Nigerian automotive ecosystem actually worked, not how it was supposed to work, but how it actually worked. For decades, the dominant business in Nigeria's auto sector was not selling new cars, it was the trade in used vehicles, what Nigerians called tokumbo cars. Second-hand vehicles, mostly from Europe, North America, and Japan, arriving through Lagos port in massive quantities and sold through a network of dealers that stretched across the country. In that ecosystem, spare parts were gold, and the most popular brand in that ecosystem was Toyota. Nigeria runs on Toyotas. The Camry, the Land Cruiser, the Corolla, these are not just vehicles in Nigeria, they are social currencies. The Toyota Camry is practically the official car of Nigeria's upper middle class. And here is where Innoson and Chukwuma reportedly stepped on a very large foot. According to court documents and multiple Nigerian press reports, Nigeria Customs Service, alongside Guarantee Trust Bank, one of Nigeria's most powerful financial institutions, brought serious allegations against Innoson and its founder. The core accusation that Innoson had improperly imported goods, including vehicle parts, using allegedly fraudulent customs documentation valued at approximately 2.4 billion naira. Chukwuma denied the allegations. Innoson denied the allegations. What followed was one of the most extraordinary legal battles in Nigerian corporate history. In 2011, the Federal High Court in Ibadan ruled in Innoson's favor. Guarantee Trust Bank was ordered to pay Innoson Nigeria Limited 2.48 billion naira. GTBank appealed. The Court of Appeal dismissed the appeal in February 2014, again affirming the judgment in Innoson's favor. GTBank went to the Supreme Court, alleging that Innoson had obtained the previous judgments through fraudulent suppression of material facts. On May 12, 2017, the Supreme Court of Nigeria delivered its ruling, again in Innoson's favor. But the story didn't end there. In July 2017, Innocent Chukwuma filed a $400 billion lawsuit against Guarantee Trust Bank, alleging that the bank's actions had constituted character assassination, damaging both his reputation and Innoson's business standing. And in January 2022, the Supreme Court made a rare move. It took a second look, restoring GTBank's appeal, giving the bank a new opportunity to argue its case. As of this video, the legal battle between Innoson and GTBank is not over. Let's zoom out, because this pattern is not unique. In the 1980s, Nigeria had multiple indigenous efforts at automotive manufacturing. Peugeot Automobile Nigeria, Volkswagen of Nigeria. When the oil price collapsed and the Nigerian economy went into crisis, those partnerships dissolved. The foreign companies left. The plants shuttered. The skills dispersed. What that left was a vacuum. A market of over 200 million people with a vehicle dependency built on foreign supply chains, by design ensuring the money kept flowing outward. Innoson was not just a business in that context, it was a structural threat to a decades-old equilibrium. In December 2017, Chukwuma was reportedly arrested by the EFCC, Nigeria's anti-corruption agency, for questioning. Here was the founder of Nigeria's only indigenous car company, being taken in while Nigerian police were placing orders for his vehicles. The image captured the entire contradiction of Nigerian economic policy: promote local industry in speeches, drag the local industrialist to a police station in practice. He was released. Charges were not formally prosecuted in that instance, but the message had been sent. Whether the allegations against Innoson had merit is a matter for Nigerian courts to determine. That is not our place to judge here. But what we can observe is the timing. The moment an African entrepreneur attempted to build a car company that threatened established import channels that had made billions for foreign manufacturers and local middlemen, that entrepreneur became the subject of serious legal and reputational pressure. Was that a coincidence? That is the deleted chapter. So where does this story end? It doesn't, not yet. Innoson Vehicle Manufacturing is still operating. After years of being written off, of bankruptcy rumors, of analysts saying the company was financially unviable, IVM is still making cars in Nnewi. More than that, the Nigerian government has become one of Innoson's most significant customers. The Nigerian military has ordered Innoson vehicles. The Nigerian police force has taken delivery of Innoson trucks. Federal agencies have begun specifying Innoson in procurement tenders. In 2025, under President Tinubu's Nigeria First policy, a sweeping initiative to prioritize local manufacturers in government procurement, Innoson was explicitly positioned as the kind of company Nigerian policy was designed to protect and promote. Business Day reported Nigerian citizens being asked, would you drive a locally assembled vehicle? And for the first time, the answer is not automatic embarrassment. Young Nigerians are beginning to say yes. But here is the honest reality Innoson still faces. Local production in Nigeria is still less than 1% of vehicle imports. The tokumbo market is still vast. The used Toyota Camry still outsells the Innoson Caris by an overwhelming margin. The infrastructure gaps, roads, financing, dealership networks, after-sales service are real and enormous. There is a concept economists called infant industry protection. The idea is that in the early stages of industrial development, new industries cannot compete on pure market terms against established global players with decades of scale, supply chain efficiency, and brand recognition. Every developed economy, the United States, Germany, Japan, South Korea, China, used infant industry protection at some point in their industrialization. They put tariffs on imports. They gave subsidies to domestic manufacturers. They created government procurement policies that favored local goods. Nigeria has tried this. The Nigeria First policy is the latest iteration.
But policy is easy, implementation is hard, consistency is harder still. What Innoson represents is not a finished story. It is a proof of concept that is still being stress tested. The question for Nigeria, and for every African economy watching this story, is not whether Innoson is perfect. It is whether Africa is willing to endure the imperfection of building something from scratch, rather than the convenience of importing something polished that someone else built. Japan did it, South Korea did it, China did it. The playbook exists. The question is whether Nigeria will stay the course long enough to write the ending at once. If you made it to the end of this video, you already know that history is full of stories that someone decided not to tell. The companies that tried and failed, the founders who built something real and then got buried under litigation, the industries that never got started because the deck was stacked against them from the beginning. That is what this channel is for. Every week we go back into the business history that the textbooks left out. The African empires, the Asian conglomerates, the supply chain monopolies, the economic miracles no one talks about, the people who invented something and then watched someone else take the credit. If that's the kind of story you want to hear, subscribe, hit the bell. Share this with someone who thinks business history is boring, because I promise you it is not boring. It was just deleted. See you in the next chapter.